The Weeping Road, a tale of shadows. I've lived here my whole life, just beyond the towering forests where the mountains loom and the air always feels like it's holding a secret. You hear a lot of stories growing up around here, warnings, mostly. Don't drive that road after dark, don't stop if you break down. And for God's sake, don't hitchhike. That road, it's a place of nightmares. The rest of the world calls it the Weeping Highway, but we just call it Sable Route. To us, it's more than a name, it's a death sentence for anyone unlucky enough to get caught out there alone. For over 40 years, people, mostly women, have vanished into its darkness. Some of them were found, their bodies tossed aside like garbage, their lives cut short in the most brutal ways, but many more, they're still missing. The police say 18, but we know better. We know there are more. I used to think the stories were just that, stories, until I drove that road myself. The day started off like any other, a routine trip down Sable Route to see a friend in Panay Valley. The weather was calm, the sky a dull gray, and I had the radio on to keep me company. It was just a road, just miles of pavement stretching through endless forest. But the further I drove, the more the trees seemed to close in around me. The air grew thick, and an unsettling silence crept in, swallowing the sound of the radio until all I could hear was the wind whispering through the leaves. That's when I saw her, a woman, standing by the side of the road, her thumb out, eyes desperate. She couldn't have been older than 20, but something about her didn't feel right. Her clothes were old, like she'd been standing there for years, and there was a darkness in her gaze that made my stomach turn. I didn't stop. I couldn't, not on that road. You see, I know the stories. I know about Isla Martin, who was last seen stumbling out of a bar in Panay Valley back in '69. She was found the next day, dead, her body dumped 10 kilometers away near an abandoned cattle ranch. No one heard her scream. The forest swallows sound, they say. Then there was Mira Solis, just 18 years old, hitchhiking like so many did back then. She was dropped off near Edgewater Ranch in July 1970 and vanished. No one ever found her, just a gone, like she was swallowed by the earth itself. I remember my mother telling me about the year 1973, when Grace Ewell and Piper Donovan both disappeared while hitchhiking. They were only 19. Their bodies were found in muddy ditches along the highway, their young lives snuffed out in the most violent of ways. I always wondered what it would feel like to have your last moments in a place so cold, so lonely. Then there was Lenora McNeil, a girl of only 16, hitchhiking to visit a friend in August 1974. She never made it. A month later, they found her body hidden deep in the wilderness, decayed, forgotten. The forest keeps its secrets well, and what about Kara Finch? She was 14, just a kid, when she disappeared while walking home in December that same year. For months later, they found her too, a broken little body, discarded like trash not far from where she went missing. She didn't make it far before whatever haunts this highway got her. I kept driving, gripping the steering wheel tighter as the stories played in my mind. Mavelock was just 12 when she vanished in 1978, riding her bike along this very road. It took 17 years before they found her remains at the bottom of a ravine stumbled upon by forestry workers. 17 years, the thought of her down there, all alone in the cold dark. It still haunts me. Then there was Samantha Cole, who was last seen in May 1981, hitchhiking near Bering Creek. A woman walking her dog found her body, beaten so badly she was barely recognizable. The road doesn't just take, it destroys. And Shelby Ashwood, she was only 16 when she disappeared in 1983, walking this same highway. She was never seen again. The police didn't find her, no one did. As I drove that endless stretch of road, I couldn't help but feel like the trees were watching me. The air had a weight to it, a heaviness that pressed down on my chest. The shadows seemed to move, twisting and writhing just at the edge of my vision. I swear I heard something, then just a faint sound, like a whisper carried on the wind. It was soft, almost too quiet to hear, but it was there. And it wasn't alone. The stories, the faces of the missing, all of them. They were with me. I could feel them in the air, in the silence. I drove faster, trying to outrun the feeling, but you can't outrun the past. You can't outrun this road. It takes what it wants, and it never gives it back. The wind picked up, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard them, the cries of those who were taken, their voices rising with the wind, pleading, begging. Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you help us, like and follow, please?